Good morning, everyone. Texas Homer here. Eric Nalin, Coach Dub. It's Monday morning. We have some interesting stuff going on, which I'm excited to talk about. Ross Dellinger put out an article about most likely incoming CFP changes. Eric, the wise man, also hinted at this last week. We discussed
we talked about it on the inside the program.
Yeah.
You can go look at it, our Friday video. It's right there.
Yep. And then we're going to talk about how you build an offense in the NIL age, kind of how you want to apportion things, who's expensive, who's not, and who's right affordable. Then we're going to talk about the Under Armour camp that Charlie was at yesterday in Melissa, Texas, learn about some recruits. And then also we have some fun NFL poaching, attempted poaching, I think, going on. So we'll lead with that because it's not going to be the longest topic. Eric, what's the latest on the NFL trying to steal our guys?
Oh, man. So I've been hitting about it the last couple of days. And right as I'm getting ready to come on video, and I was going to write it right after this, but Anwar Richardson, Orange Bloods, wrote it. The guy I was hitting at the other day was Torrey Becton. NFL made a run at him. I don't have the team 100% locked in, but I have a pretty good idea they wear green. I'm not sure exactly. But they're going to keep Torrey Becton, and that's absolutely massive. When I wrote it for our board, they were all thinking coach. But strength and conditioning as a coach is very important because he oversees the entire team, and he actually has a big room. There's a million other coaches, nutrition, all these other things. It's a very important. It's very important that they were able to retain him. That would have been a massive, massive loss. They've already had quite a few changes that kind of hurt the team. From a psychological standpoint, they'll overcome it, of course, but losing Blake Gideon, very popular in his room, losing Tashard Choice, very popular throughout the entire team, tough loss. Keeping Becton was massive. We're watching one more. I might get scooped on it, but I've already hinted it to the readers at IT.
Yeah,
you did.
Hey man, this is a sign of being good, right? I was telling Coach before he came on, I was like, it's still insane that we're like keeping coaches for 5 years. That's nuts in and of itself. Like, this is such a strange formula Sark's been able to execute. This is not
fighting off teams in February, middle of February. Dude, I don't think I've ever had a coaching search. It's funny, if you go to Inside Texas, we always do huge numbers in like December and January. Yeah. And that's because traditionally we've covered so many coaching changes. So we have all these subscribers rolling over from kind of these odd times, right? January is a weird time to be blowing up. Football season is normally over. And now it's rolling into February. Hopefully, hey, let's go. Let's have a coaching search in March. I'm down.
So am I, because February is normally very slow and boring. So it's like at least we're getting some actual action in February, which is
I'd rather get some peace of quiet, but
I'm down with it. Give us something to talk about. We don't that's speculate.
A sign of being good, though, man. Teams are coming after your coaches, even your strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah,
that's wild.
Yeah, and do they have, for position coaches, do they have to state they're interviewing? Is that I know for like head coaches and stuff, the NFL puts out who's interviewing. Is that the same at the position coach level in the NFL?
I don't know. I can't remember ever covering college to NFL because people weren't really coming after Texas coaches. All the coaching searches I were covering were guys getting fired for poor performance. So I don't think so. But yeah, we're watching one more, man. We'll see.
Yeah. I think you were saying that was a coin flip too. So we'll see, man.
We'll see how that shakes out.
I'm not at liberty to talk much about that one, but we'll see, man. Sharks going to be fine. Texas is going to be fine. You just kind of have to regroup, but it's just weird for us to be covering this in February, but it's all good.
How does it work with trying to rehire? Because you're right, it is February in a weird time. So like, say you are trying to get a coach back from the NFL, a coach from another college team, are you in a weird spot at that point? Like, has everything been picked over, or do you just got the bat signal to the agents and then people flock in?
Yeah, not if you're Texas. And Charlie probably has some insight on this, but I mean, Texas, their last running back coach had been at USC for a week, right? Tashard Choice. Everybody said Tashard Choice came from Georgia Tech, which is true, but technically true. Guys on the board would correct me if I didn't say this. So he came from USC. So Texas can get whoever they want. Sometimes it's a matter of money, but really any school can. Sam Houston State can go get a guy. They have to just go down a level or something, but everybody can find a guy. You go get a high school guy,
Yeah, you definitely can do that. I feel like the agents, Texas is a job that most coaches would jump at the bid to take. It's Texas. It has a brand. It has a name. You come to Texas and do well, the opportunities for you are going to explode, right? And so I feel like these agents, they're out there fishing. They're trying to get their guy the next job. Honestly, that's the way it works. And so next thing you hear about it, a guy's a candidate, and you didn't even know it because the agent was working behind it in the back channel. So
right. This is Charlie's first really like coaching search cycle, and he's seen it firsthand. And he's been getting information firsthand of people like advocating for these jobs. You know, whether it's defensive back or running back. Charlie's got information flooding in because everybody's lining up. If we were coaching North Texas, or if we were covering North Texas, we wouldn't have this type of information because people wouldn't be lining up like they are for Texas.
Yeah, not gonna let me in.
Yeah. Good position to be in. All right, guys. So college football can change here. Now, none of this is, finalized, but it does look like it's where it's going. This is Ross Dellinger's full report. And like we said, Eric's on the record last week telling you we're going to go to 9 games in the SEC, most likely, all this stuff. But I do want to talk about it. I kind of broke down the points, and because it is interesting, the changes. And I think they're going to be good changes ultimately. It's going to consolidate the sport, right? It's going to send more power to the Big Ten and SEC. So if you're pushing back on that, I'll agree.
Losing for a bit.
Yeah, we did. So I don't know what Ross Dellinger actually reported. I'm curious to hear what he said about the Big Ten because I didn't really have any of that. What I covered was that it's the schedule in 2026 is very likely to go to 9 games. It hasn't been voted on, so that's why it's not a breaking story necessarily. It wasn't voted on yet. It's just we know Ross is picking up on it too, that it's going that direction. And then also, it's very likely to go to. They're very likely to expand the playoffs, and because of that, the SEC and I guess the Big Ten, I haven't read that part of it, are encouraging schools to take on tougher non-conference schedules. So Texas is fine in that regard. Texas is always taking harder teams. Charlie, you got Michigan this year, Ohio State next year. Last year was Alabama. So Texas is perfectly fine with that. But it's clear that the landscape is changing, and it's almost hard to keep up with all this stuff.
Sorry, guys. Internet froze for a second there.
It's life with the tough non-conference games. And coaches already talking about, hey, we played a tough schedule. The season's very long. Our guys are getting beat up. What happens to spring? I know people are talking about, no spring game now, maybe possibly.
Yeah.
How does fall camp change as far as hitting too, right? You're going to see coaches maybe kind of dial it back a little bit. It's going to be interesting to see with that, a lot of tough games.
Part of our coverage last year about fall camp was them kind of ramping up in much slower than they had in previous years because, Sark understands and what Texas has, and that's why Sark's spend so much effort and NIL, frankly, on building out depth. And that's why they play 40 guys, 40 guys a game. Normally, schools don't do it. Sometimes they play 70 guys a game. But depth is important as far as I'm curious to see. And Homer, to circle you back in on this with what Dellinger reported. I haven't read Dellinger's report other than seeing what he wrote was very similar to what I wrote. What's he saying about playoff expansion? And they've got to take away some games. They're going to add some games. It seems
This is my favorite part. This quote. So the SEC and Big Ten are now going to have decision-making authority over the CFP starting in 2026.
Okay, yeah, okay. This
is the funniest part, though. They say ACC, Big 12, and Group of 5 will have meaningful consultation.
Yeah,
but no control.
So this is the very beginning of what I wrote, a long article a couple of weeks ago, and it wasn't very widely read on IT just because it's kind of boring, but it's all like the political and the going forward points of it is that it's all pointing towards like a super conference. And one of the things they're looking at is a super conference between the Big Ten and the SEC with a couple add-ons, right? They'd still want Notre Dame. Clemson would get an invite, probably Florida State if they could figure out how to win more than 2 games. Miami. But I think this is all pointing towards the same thing. And I don't normally like to cover stuff outside of Texas because a lot of it bores me. But this is so big. Where the sport is going is so big. It's a huge story. And I think only about 4 or 5 guys are actually covering it.
Yeah, it's so what they want to do, it'll either be an expansion to 14 or 16 teams. The 14-team model will be 4 and 4, meaning the SEC and the Big Ten automatically get 4 automatic qualifiers. So 8 teams automatically are going to be SEC and Big Ten. The next is going to be 2 and 2. Big 12 is going to have 2. ACC is going to have 2. And then finally, there will be like a 1 and 1 for like a Group of 5 and Notre Dame if ranked top 14. So they're literally adding Notre Dame into the structure.
Yeah.
So if Notre Dame is top 14, they're in. If they're not, another Group of 5, I guess.
Yeah, so it sounds like the power players are kind of freestyling right now. Like actually, we couldn't even track down how the voting process procedures for expansion or for the 9-game conference schedule. We're looking through all the bylaws. Me and Joe the other morning, it's like, first of all, this is why I'm not a lawyer. I can argue to my heart's desire, but I can't read through all the jargon. It drives me insane. So we're trying to figure out what are the rules for them to expand. What's the voting procedure? And one of them was like, well, the commissioner can just call a vote and kind of determine the rules. We're like, all right. Well, no wonder they feel like they have the votes already. Maybe they only need 8.
Well, that was the threat too, right? Basically, the SEC and Big Ten were like, "You're gonna do it this way, or we're gonna leave." They had all the leverage, so it's like the other teams are mad, but there's no other choice, and so they seized power. I mean, this is no way around it. This is a takeover.
It's nice. It's nice to have leverage. If you guys have ever been in any sort of negotiation whatsoever, either have leverage or figure out a way to get some. You got to create it. Everybody thinks so and so is a great negotiator. That negotiator who's so great normally has leverage.
Yeah, and so what's interesting too with the 4 and 4 autos, what they've shown is over the past 15 years or whatever, the SEC and the Big Ten have had about 4 teams in the top 14 every year.
All right.
On average, the ACC and the Big 12 has had about 2, and then G5 1. So even though it feels like this is just naturally favoring Big Ten and SEC, they actually did use a data-driven approach here to prove over the past 15 years. So they actually do have – they didn't just make up 4 teams, which you're going to hear the Big 12 fans mad about.
And Charlie, from a talent perspective, wouldn't that align with like who's going to the NFL Combine?
Actually, yeah. Honestly, you look at it, and then most of the guys will come from the SEC and the Big Ten. Those are the best teams. And then maybe you don't have Lane Kiffin tweeting during the playoffs now because more SEC teams are in there, right? So you won't have so many people complaining about it.
So here's the coolest part, right? So that means the SEC, because you have 4 autos, right? The preseason no longer matters. If you're the 4 top teams in the SEC, you're in. Not overall rank or overall record. 4 in the SEC. So that opens up preseason, right? So now you can go to 9 games in the SEC, like Eric reported last week that they want to do eventually. But also now they're talking about certain packages for the SEC and the Big Ten in preseason. So they're going to sell that separately than the season, make millions more, and give millions more to the Big Ten and the SEC because they're going to match up Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, Michigan, all this stuff in the preseason now. And those games don't actually count towards you getting in, but they're going to be able to sell inventory. So now we're going to get cooler games in the preseason, but it is going to preseason won't matter besides it's fun.
It's dizzying, but I know that, IT will be there covering whoever Texas plays. Put them in front of anybody. Texas will be ready to play. We'll be ready to cover it.
Texas is already doing this model.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. They've been playing. So, who did they play? Who was the 2022 non-con? Drawing a blank on that. 2023 obviously was Alabama that everybody who was the 22? They had a good one in 2022, I think. And then last year, of course, was Michigan. And they're catching these teams on a good cycle, Alabama was breaking in Milroe. Michigan lost everybody. Ohio State loses everybody except for their wide receivers and Caleb Downs. So, I mean, they're catching these guys on some good cycles. It's perfect timing. But that's, they're being rewarded for bringing these tough teams to bear.
Also, what's interesting with 4 autos, the championship games don't really matter at all anymore. So that's what's interesting.
Yeah, they should do away with it. Honestly, they should do away with it. These guys are beaten up. They're still beaten up. We're talking team sources. It's middle of February again. We're
talking about not doing spring ball because people are still beat up, which is crazy. And it's but also now they're talking. So this is what they're talking about too: doing play-ins. So the 3rd ranked SEC team will play the 6th ranked or whatever. So they'll do kind of. I think the NBA does it now. But instead of like conference championships, you'll have a play-in game within the SEC to get into the top 4.
Jeff, can you imagine that shaking up things? A team that struggled all season, then they knock out a higher seed just again in the play-in. That'd be a lot of people mad about that one.
Yeah,
well, that's kind of how baseball works, right? The hot team comes in because they have the best record in baseball since August. And that's more meaningful than having the best record since March, or if it's our second best record since March, because it's such a huge data set from August because baseball plays so many games. It's meaningful, and so you get terrified when you're the higher seed against a team that's hotter than you.
That's the nature of tournaments.
Right.
You know, like the top NFL team loses pretty often. The top in basketball, same thing. As soon as you go into a tournament, you're right. It changes the whole, did you earn it type thing. So did conference championships come up at home just playing for a bye? Conference championship games Conference championship games just playing for a bye seems excessive. They would play for a bye, I think, in the 14 team, but in the 16 team, I don't know why they would get rid of those first round buys.
Well, that would be math. Everybody has to play, right, for that to work?
Yeah, I guess.
I'm trying to figure. I don't know. This is not. I'm not good on the fly. Nothing math is on the fly.
Nothing math. No math.
Yeah, I'm counting my fingers and toes. About to take my shoe off.
But yeah, and this is also interesting. SEC and Big Ten, 29% each of college football revenue. So they're going to get 30% just like off bat because of guaranteed. And
it's going to be reconciled too because the Big Ten has a much better TV contract currently than the SEC. So expect that to get blown up again because the SEC is not going to stand by and watch Purdue make more than Auburn. That's just not going to work. But expect that to get blown up. It's just the politics of college football are more intriguing than ever. Normally, I'd never care about it. But there's just so many things going on. It's an insane time to cover the sport.
Well, and essentially with it being a takeover of the future, so SEC and Big Ten teams are going to triple or quadruple their CFP payouts with this. And this is not even talking about selling the preseason inventory for extra millions of dollars when they play. So these schools are going to be getting so much more money than Big 12 or whatever. They're going to be a secondary league. They're going to be a feeder league. They're going to turn into like the real league is going to be this. And so that's where it's going just because the amount of money they're going to be able to execute so much better than the other teams. That's the hard part to swallow, right? I think for most people.
And Notre Dame gets to keep every penny of it, right?
Notre Dame
on their way in.
Notre Dame is guaranteed a 1% guaranteed payout. Just automatically.
So we got a way to turn that into more, I'm sure. UT boy, what's going on here, man?
Haven't seen you in a while, man.
Yeah. Any news on the wide receiver room?
What's up, Coach Top?
Top makes it in.
Well, what's up, dude?
All right. So long-term implications: the power gap widens between the SEC, Big Ten, and all the other conferences.
Yeah.
The other teams are going to become second-tier leagues. They're going to have fewer paths to contention, and they're not going to have enough money. And then basically college football moves big step closer to semi-professional models. Schools will share revenue with athletes. And most important, the NCAA's role continues to diminish. So it's going to be.
Even in my piece, I wrote that Dellinger will probably get ahead of me on this one. And here he is. Ross Dellinger got ahead of me on it. So more detail.
How do you guys feel about it? I think, man, now that we're in this world, works for me. But also, I'm a fan of an SEC team, right? So,
you're not just an SEC team, a fan of Texas. So, Texas, everything that's broken in college football the last 5 years has benefited Texas. Almost everything. I mean, there isn't a rule that hasn't gone in UT's favor, and that's kind of just the way of all politics, right? The better situated you are to take advantage of the scenario, the more you're going to actually do that. And Texas has benefited from every single rule change we've seen in the last 5 years.
Yeah. Coach, how do you feel coaching at small school? Are you like, come on, man, like we already can't hang. This guarantees we can't hang.
Yeah, it's tough for them. I think they better create their own currency some kind of way or something. I don't know. Get into the crypto world and create their own coin. Let it circulate within their own system because it's going to be hard to compete. They're going to have to sell guys on the NFL model. We can come develop you and get you money later on, and kind of like JUCO does or Division II.
Well, what's the real model is like, hey, man, we can get you the SEC. Like that's what it's turning into.
This is audition for Tech. Hey, you play against Texas. What's your model? You play against Texas and do well. Maybe Texas will recruit you. Do the same thing. Put up good film. Maybe a bigger school comes after you. So
you get this Coach Top comment here. It looks like Coach Top's ready to buy a Tashard Choice meme coin.
Yeah.
Everything reminds me of Tashard Choice. Take that hat off, Coach Top. Coach Top going through it, man. Hey, there will be another Tashard Choice.
All right, guys, before we keep going, let's hear from Andre the Lawyer.
This video is brought to you by Andre the Lawyer. If you're injured, trust the team that secured millions for their clients and helped thousands of Texans with their injury case. Car wrecks, slip and falls, 18-wheeler accidents, on-the-job injuries, and wrongful deaths. Don't let insurance tell you what your claim is worth. Hire Andre the Lawyer to fight for you. Principal office is in Dallas, but they serve Texans throughout the state. So don't wait and call Andre the Lawyer today at 214-444-8808. That's 214-444-8808. The contact information is in the description.
Got a question here.
A couple good questions.
Yeah, that's what I'm about to grab them. So university-funded NIL versus individual NIL. Do you think that there will ever be a time where privately funded NIL will exceed university-funded NIL? Example, Arch's Red Bull endorsement.
Anybody else have thoughts? I have some thoughts.
Look, I'm going to say yes, because you can get so many private NIL deals more than what the school can give you. You got so many people who probably come out the big names like Arch. Yeah, that's
Anthony Hill, Simmons. Anthony Hill, Simmons.
Well, private can pick one guy and unload the budget on him,
right?
You know, and so it's like if it's university funded,
they're going to eventually. It's going to be. They're going to have some body is going to make sure that it's actually a market relevant deal. Like I think the charity nonsense is going away, where a guy drives 1 nil for Habitat for Humanity and gets $50K. I think that's pretty much out of it.
Yeah.
But at Texas, you can still exceed university-funded NIL for a couple reasons. One, it's Texas in a massive market, and you'll have some years where it's an outlier like Arch. But really, I mean, Diabello goes and smiles one time and throws 30 touchdowns in a season, and he's going to break the bank too. Yeah. But also, university-funded NIL is going to be limited to between 18.5 and 20 million, depending on how the scholarships are allocated throughout the athletic department. And they're going to disperse that throughout the athletic department. Most of that's going to go to football. Don't get me wrong, some basketball, but there's almost a cap on that. There's not going to be a cap on these actually market-funded NILs. That's Anthony Hill, great smile. That guy's going to make bank. The quarterback at Texas is going to make bank. Ryan Wingo. Once Ryan Wingo goes off, like his junior year, Ryan Wingo is going to he'll make more in market NIL than he will make from school, I imagine. Just knowing that kid and smile, I mean, it's just it's going to be easy to sell at Texas in that market.
So yeah, we think private will exceed university at some point because you can also just pick one guy and unload the marketing budget there, opposed to having to spread it as well.
Yeah, I don't think anybody will ever know what Arch makes at Texas. I don't think anybody will have a clue, honestly.
Yeah. Who would y'all want to be on the schedule, assuming less Big Ten matchups? Save those for the playoffs.
I mean, it kind of depends on how the playoff makeup is. But the schedules are made so far in advance; it's hard to know the landscape when the game is actually played. I would want to play Lincoln Riley until he's out of football. Honestly, I've got an irrational disdain for the guy. Texas should play USC until he's out of college football forever.
Yeah,
that's a good one. That's a good one.
I heard someone pushing back against the SEC and the Big Ten being this equal, because he was saying basically the Big Ten had one good year and is able to cash out like they've had a decade of success. And SEC was kind of down. Now here's the argument. The SEC will never get an agreement to move forward by saying, okay, everyone is subservient to us, including you, Big Ten. Like the Big Ten is going to, of course, say that we're equal. Yeah. But the argument is like the Big Ten's like top echelon is really good, but by the time you get to the bottom of their league, it's not comparable. Because like even like Vanderbilt's the worst like SEC recruiting team. They're like what? They're like 30th or 50th, like something that's crazy. Yeah. But I've also heard the pushback too that the Big Ten is kind of capitalizing here as if they've been that successful top to bottom. What do you guys think? I think just negotiation wise, you have to partner with the Big Ten. They're going to force equality. That's how you move forward.
But I think the SEC is going to try to put tariffs on the Big Ten.
I was going to. That is what.
It's going to be America versus Canada hockey. I don't know if you guys saw that the other day. Go find it.
But y'all were loving it in the group chat, apparently.
They were.
It was insane. It was insane. But what I was about to say is that the SEC and Texas is part of the SEC, but we do not care about the conference identity. We don't give a shit. We cover Texas football.
Right.
If Texas was playing, it doesn't matter. If Texas was in the Bundesliga playing soccer, we don't care about the Bundesliga. We want Texas to win. But
I do want the money from the league.
Absolutely, and they'll put that to good use and probably spend it more wisely than anybody else because they have the smart leadership. But NIL, SEC has to not get over its skis because NIL does add parity. I mean, smart schools are going to be able to capitalize in this environment. It's not just going to be SEC schools. SEC schools had kind of a barrier to entry. First, they had demographics in their favor, and then they had the fact that they would play by different rules. And now the rules are much more transparent. And that's why you saw Texas elevate to where it is now. But the Big Ten schools can do that as well. Look at Michigan. Michigan has kind of been a kindred spirit of Texas. They're big on academics. Kind of a very good, similar trajectory, right? They ebb and flow. They're great depending on if they have good coaches or run of talent, but haven't been able to sustain it over a long time, over a long period. But now NIL, and look at what they're doing, right? They're flipping guys from LSU. So I mean, the SEC, I think parity is going to be here, but the parity is going to be between the Big Ten and the SEC, not anybody else.
Yeah, with these numbers, there's no way that it won't. And also, I heard like people were mad saying the Big Ten is not equal to SEC in full depth. The reality is, with this much money coming in, the bottom of the Big Ten is going to be getting a ton of money. They'll get better.
They'll get better.
So it's like that's how it works too. I think it will. The tide will rise all ships here.
Hey, here's a good thing to think about, and one of my sources brought it up when we were talking about the whole landscape, and this is a good one for Coach Williams to ponder given where he lives. Let's say they go to 30-team playoffs and SMU is out. And the 30-team playoff league has different rules, and they set a hard cap at $15 million. What do you think SMU will do in that landscape? They will spend 30 and be the best team in college football.
Yeah, they would. Easy.
SMU, man.
Well, I think everybody's going to figure out what
about it at this point either.
Everybody, I know that was brilliant when I thought about it. And so it's like TCU. Let's say TCU gets in the playoffs. In the let's say it goes to 36 teams, and TCU gets in, and SMU isn't. SMU is going to be better than TCU every year for the next, as long as that's the structure. So there's just so many different variables to account for. When that guy said that, it blew my mind because they're exactly right. SMU is flush with cash. They're about to have Jay Hartzell as their president. They're going to make a very good athletic AD hire. And so you can't leave SMU out. They have to play by the same rules. There's just so many different factors to account for.
That's a good one.
SMU with the loaded gun, like choose wisely, guys.
SMU's like, hey, just leave us out, guys. We don't want to be in. Put your little paltry, $15 million salary cap on and watch where it goes. And that's exactly what would happen. SMU would dominate.
Yeah. SMU is funny because they're not playing around, and their history doesn't play around. Conference championship games are a waste. I mean, with this current model, it is.
It is now. Yeah,
it's bragging rights. I also think we're going to have to go more as fans to bragging rights, like with the preseason not really mattering. Like if you get in, like it just needs to be. It matters because I beat you, not because it matters because of something down the road. It matters because that Saturday we matched up. Yeah,
kind of gets back to that hockey game though. Nobody would ever know that was an exhibition game if you watched it. And the fights. I think the decision to fight, 2 times in the first 3 or 6 seconds, and then I think the third one was organic. The decision to fight, I think, was scripted. The fights were real, but that game was not an exhibition game. And so I think if you have it where if Texas lines up against Georgia, and it just means something no matter what.
Yeah. And we're going to have to switch it to that. Even how we cover the sport, because we're always just like, what does this mean for 2 months from now? It's just got to be, look, it's fun because we beat you. Gabriel wants to play Maryland and punish them for the Herman era.
Hey, man, line up Maryland and Cal. Cal.
Dude, I was in school during that era, and I just remember being so because I was like, dude, I get to Texas and now we suck. I was like, we were legendary.
That was a late game too, man.
My stepmom's side of my dad married a lot of times, but my stepmom that I'm close to, her whole family is Cal, and so we went out there, partied with them. They were taking me to all the frats and all that stuff. Good time. And we lost, and it was just the most embarrassing. If you go on that campus, you can't imagine losing to that school. It's like if Austin didn't care about football.
Yeah,
that's what Cal is, and they still beat Texas. It's the most embarrassing thing of all time.
It was brutal.
Yeah,
Peyton and Eli had a few games this year. I mean,
absolutely.
Why not? Hang out in the press box.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They wear the big hat like the brother, try to hide in disguise.
Yeah, what's he? Is he trying to hide? Because that would be I would be like, hey, look at the guy in the giant. Oh, that's Cooper Manning.
True.
Cooper does talk about wearing his big hat.
Yeah.
To try to avoid them putting the camera on him.
Did you see? So Arch Hyde, Arch's brother, had an interview the other day. I think it was on 24/7. It was basically everything we wrote during his recruitment about how Arch chose Austin in part because he could just blend in. Now, not necessarily on campus, but in the city of Austin, he's not necessarily, he's not the big swinging DI. Because you've got Matthew McConaughey, you got
real celebrities everywhere.
Yeah, you got Joe Rogan. Like, he can kind of blend in. He can go off campus and blend in, and that's what the article was about. That actually played a major part in why Arch. There's no escaping in Athens, right? There's no escaping in Tuscaloosa, but in Austin, he can kind of blend in. Even his frat house, he can blend in because everybody just knows he's just a regular guy. On campus, different story, but. Yeah, I don't think Cooper. I think Cooper's he's getting the exact opposite of what he wants. I would see a guy in a giant hat, then look at him closer. Well, what's this guy wearing such a big hat? Oh, it's Cooper Manning. If he just walked by me wearing a pair of shades, I was just like, who's that guy?
Well, he's wearing a polo and khakis, like 90% of everyone else there. So it's like he can blend in better with just
but that's actually 100% of the Mannings. So
exactly.
Polo and khakis. That's 100%.
Just move in and out of frats, and we won't be able to spot you, dude. Like, you'll blend in perfectly. I think Texas should schedule teams that they have not historically played. Clemson, Florida State, Penn State, Oregon, Miami would be very good options for Texas to schedule. So with this new deal, it's not going to be like the Miamis, unless we do it separately. But it would be like a Penn State and Oregon, because it would be a Big Ten team.
There'll be some fun games to cover, though.
But see, you're incentivized now, right, to sell your preseason and make it as big as possible, because it's about money now, and it's not going to punish you if you don't win. So, like, you don't need to just have cupcakes. You're going to need one or two probably, just as like basically a scrimmage. But you're incentivized financially now to play big games from all over.
I could see it going back to like the strategic value. Texas would do like a road game against Rice in Houston just to go get in front of Houston kids. What about Georgia Tech? They love recruiting Georgia right now. It doesn't come with the risk of playing, Georgia.
Yeah.
And you already played Georgia anyway. But you get to go to Atlanta. 94% likelihood you win. I could see Georgia Tech, but Miami kind of serves a similar purpose. Maybe UCF, right? It's not a sexy team, but just get in Florida, play in front of a bunch of kids.
Yeah,
that'll work.
The preseason is going to be a lot more fun, like, to cover, because it won't just be 3 games of like guaranteed wins. Even this last season when we were good, like, you don't get much from UTSA there. Like, you're doing the post game and you're like, we learned really nothing, So it's like, that'll be fun to play some teams that really test you. Get excited earlier.
Yeah, it might have worked just getting the younger guys some experience playing, especially when you needed them later in the season. But other than that,
when you schedule it, it might look like they test you, and then you face them and they lose their whole team the year before, because roster cycles matter more than anybody realizes. But yeah, if you put a big brand on there, they're likely to at least give you a game. Now Texas is going to beat Ohio State like they beat Michigan this past year. I don't know if people even understand that yet. The lines don't seem to understand it, but it matters on the roster cycles. But put the big names on there. That'd be fun. UCLA would be good. They love to recruit LA, right? I don't think they even got close to the footprint or the foothold that they want in LA yet. Go play UCLA. UCLA is not going to test you, but it's still a real team.
I hope we don't schedule like 17 years out. I hope that ends too, where it's like, because like you can schedule a good team, and then by the time you play them, they're the worst ever. So it's like, hopefully with this new model, man, like you're scheduling like tops 3 years out.
What was the latest Notre Dame schedule? Was that 2019? Or 29?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's like we're scheduling so far out that it's like, is it real? Like, I would have to talk to someone in the admin, but it's like, do you really need 5 years to plan for these things? Like, because I've seen it, right? Like, whenever we dropped out of the SEC, they immediately just put a G5. Like, you can do it. So I don't know. I think we need to get rid of this concept of like scheduling 900 years out too, man.
I'm with you on that.
All right, guys, before we keep going, let's hear from Laura Baker.
Hi, I want to tell you about Laura Baker. If you're looking for a new home in the 512 or even at this point, let's face it, 737 area code, there's only one number to call. That's Laura Baker at 512-784-0505. As a member of the elite Andy Allen team with Keller Williams, Laura has helped Longhorns find the home of their dreams in Central Texas. Just ask our resident sex symbol, Ian Boyd, who moved all the way from Michigan to Texas with Laura's help. Laura can help you find what you're looking for in the 512, the 737, or even parts of the 254 and the 210. Just, give her a call at 512-784-0505. Her email is in the description as well as the rest of her contact details. She's a friend. Give her a call.
Coach, you were in Melissa for the Under Armour camp. Luckily, you guys were indoors too, because that would have sucked if you weren't, man. Ugh. They don't think about that when they schedule those sometimes, man. I'm like, dude, sitting out there at 30 degrees is brutal.
Yeah,
but
they had the parents stuck by the door in the cold, man. It was brutal for them.
Yeah. Ugh. All right. So we're going to talk about the main players that you wrote your article on this morning, a couple of hours ago. First things first, offensive lineman Felix Ojo. What'd you see from him?
Man, I saw Ojo compete. That was the biggest thing. I want to see him get out there and go against guys who are highly rated on the other side and really step up. The thing I liked most about it, he played a little guard yesterday too, and they were moving guys around. But most guys like, I'm a tackle, I'm not a guard. He's like, oh, okay, line me up, let's go, and pointing out guys. I want to see that competitive spirit, and he has it. He's I'll choke you out type of mentality, right? And I love to just see that from a guy who's people are like, oh, he's tall, he's he doesn't have much weight to him. He looks like a basketball player. I told Eric in the group, like me, he looked like almost like a receiver. It didn't look like an offensive lineman, but when he lines up, he has that offensive line mentality. And so just see Zayden Crimpin also fight back and show a little attitude, and then one-on-one drill, most of you guys, they don't really have pass rush moves. They bull rush. And Crimpin got kind of mad at the guy like, yo, work a move. Don't try to bull rush. And then he kind of just tossed the guy to the side like, yeah, work a move and get back in line. It's like, I see why Cal Flood loves these guys, right? They got the mentality that you want in the trenches, man. I just love to see it. I thought I was going to see a fight or two, but I guess it's not hockey, so.
It seemed like Ojo was keeping a wide base, and that was giving him a little bit more power. Coach, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, he did keep a wide base. Sometimes I thought his feet got a little too wide, but he just has so much strength. The guy didn't have a counter move. He kind of just put a halt to the guy and was pad rushing, but he did have a kind of a wide base, and sometimes he got a little too wide. But I think as he grows and gets a little, he gets stronger, he'll get a stronger base, and
he needs
to develop that.
He's got the starter kit. He needs more development, I think, than his rankings indicate. Fans will see that ranking, of course, and he's got that talent. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes you can expect too much too early, especially with an offensive lineman. I think he's going to take a little bit more time than people realize, but the toolkit's there. Yeah. What about Crimpin and his length? It's not about height, right? You're not playing pass protection with your head. What about
playing basketball?
What about his length? Can he play tackle?
I think he can definitely play tackle. You might have the Kevin Banks mode, right? Where he may not be. You look at Crimpin, it's like, how tall is this guy? You get next to him. He's really 6'4", but he has such long arms, which will allow him to play tackle. He can move like a left tackle. He has great footwork, great hips, great base, but he has such long arms that allow him to play tackle if you needed him to, right? Most people may pencil him in as guard, but he definitely can play tackle because he has a long reach with the arms. But he's a legit 6'4" too, so I don't think he's done growing. Look at saw his dad yesterday. That legit 6'5". He may end up being taller than his dad, so that's something to take note of too, because I don't think he's done growing.
The athleticism he showed in those videos, I was like, okay, that guy's a tackle all the way. But what's crazy, the way he moves, he could play center if he had to.
Yeah,
I mean, he could legit be a 5-position player. Normally, when you see that, it doesn't work out well for the player. So, it's hard for him to find a home. Yeah. But if tackle doesn't, he has such a high floor because if tackle doesn't work out, he could play 2 other positions. I love the kid. I think he's a top 100 player based on what we learned this week.
Yeah, I agree. I thought going through drills like kick post and kick step, he looked better than most everybody that was out there. He looked so natural going through the drills, man. Mm-hmm. Like if you want to teach tape or going through drills, Zayden Crimpin set that for everybody.
Yeah, quick feet, light on his feet. Here's a good one. Williams. He's always going to be Williams David. That's what his name was. He'll always be Williams David. I don't care what it says, David Keith Williams. I don't need his government name. I need his IT name.
Do you think Felix Ojo would be open to playing right tackle at Texas, Coach? I continue to have doubts about him and John Turntime both being in the 2026 recruiting class for Texas.
I'll tell you this about both guys. they don't care where they play. They just want to get on the field and play. You put me on left tackle, you put me on right tackle, I'm going to dominate. And that's their mentality. That's their mindset. I mean, of course, left tackles ever since Lawrence Taylor hit, I guess, Joe Thousand, everybody wants to play left tackle because they get paid more than everybody else. But these guys are open to playing either side. They just want to get on the field and play and show that they can play. So, but everybody has versatility within this 2026 class where they can play all 5 spots if they need it. I mean, Ojo probably wouldn't play center, but he can play guard, he can play tackle, but I don't think these guys will matter as long as they're on the field competing and playing.
Texas just sent back-to-back right tackles to the league as well.
Here's another thing to remember, and I remember watching that Theismann game as a kid. My dad being horrified. I didn't quite understand. I was pretty young at the time. That was terrible. But Turntine and Ojo are on different developmental timelines. Ojo is going to be, Turntine is going to be starting left tackle when Ojo is kind of figuring it out, kind of like what we saw with Kelvin Banks and Cameron Williams. And that's nothing against Ojo at all. He's got as much upside as Turntine or any tackle in the country. I don't know that Cody Green guy. That guy has a massive floor and ceiling. That guy, it's just, you could send that guy on a Mormon mission for 3 years and then put him in the NFL. He's ready to go right now. But Turntine's going to be starting left tackle before Ojo actually is ready. It's a Kelvin Banks, Cameron Williams sort of situation.
That's true. But yeah.
Drew Evers.
Yeah. I saw Drew Evers. I saw him line up at center, guard, and tackle yesterday. I thought he did a great job. He also has excellent footwork. He has a strong base, man. He's sound, a lot more sound than a lot of guys, but he doesn't care where he lines up. He's a versatile guy. I can definitely see him playing center. Seeing him getting compete yesterday at center, snapping the ball, and then blocking. It's like, okay, he definitely can play center. I see why teams are looking at him like, hey, can you play center? And he's not shying away from him. Like, I can play center and dominate. And he showed that yesterday. I thought he, outside of crimping, I thought he was probably the next guy in line that looked good, going through drills and just having good footwork and having that nasty mentality at the offensive line that you want, man. He's definitely a competitor.
What was fun about him was when you said, he lined up at tackle. He's going up against a Duncanville kid that everybody knows about, and he wasn't losing due to quickness to an edge, a certified edge, college edge. So you got to like his chance at pass protection as an interior lineman. So that if Texas goes for a center this year, I could see it being Evers, and I think they want to. I think they're going to take 6 offensive line. I wrote an article about it yesterday. The most ideal, realistic offensive line at this time. I didn't have Evers in there, but if they go to a center, I could see them pushing on him, like Coach Williams has been reporting.
Yeah. What was that Duncanville edge you were talking about, KJ Ford?
Yeah, Ford. The other one is awesome too. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now.
Landon Barnes. He looked good yesterday too.
So, okay. Coach, you mentioned KJ Ford.
KJ Ford is not going to end up at Texas. Landon, what's his last name? Daniels?
Landon Barnes.
Oh, yeah. That guy has got a lot of upside. His only issue is his ball get-off is not great. I don't know if that's it seems like everybody at Duncanville has great ball get-off. Colin Simmons, of course, is great. That guy's got it. And Ford, I think it's probably Ford's strength. So I'm trying to figure out why this guy doesn't have it, but he's got the length and size and upside. I think it's a kid that Texas should look hard at. Yeah,
definitely. Every time I see him, it seems like he's getting taller, man. He's close to 6'4.5" now. I was like, man, last time I saw him last summer when he came to camp, he may have been 6'2.5", so he's grown since then. But I got a picture with those two side by side. He looks like a strong side defensive end, maybe your Barron Sorrell type. Like, he's going to develop into a really, really great player because he can play the run very well too. And a lot of people think he's just as good as KJ Ford around the DFW area, and so I think he's, like Eric said, he has a chance to be really, really good, man. He's going to continue to grow as a player.
And that guy, my guy at Duncanville raves about him as far as the mental eval. And so I don't know, man. I can see Texas, rethinking a little bit. They're looking nationally, but then they come back and go, hey, why don't we just get this guy in our backyard? He's at a pipeline school. Let's not overthink this.
Duncanville's so unfair. Their main known edge. And it's like, really, the other edge is actually better. It's like, come on, man.
Here's a good one, but I'm going to draw a blank on this guy's school.
Any lineman stand out that's not being talked about or highly recruited?
I like this kid named Noah Best, and I think he has an offer. I gotta look that up. I'm not sure. I think he's Jake Majors again, except a little bit more physical.
Midlothian?
Yeah, I'm gonna say Midlothian.
There it is. Okay, yeah, I knew it was an M. I think he's Jake Majors again. I think he's more physical than Jake Majors. Maybe not quite as light on his feet as Jake, where, Jake's the limiting factor on Jake for playing left tackle was just length. Like, the Jake moved like a left tackle. He just didn't have the length for it. Noah might not work quite like that, but I think he's a bigger bully in the run game. And if they looked for a center, I've got Noah Best as a guy that I would, if the head checks out, of course. I don't have that understanding of the eval, but on tape, I love Noah Best.
Yeah, you said it right on here. Like, he's a bully in the trench. If it was they were doing inside run yesterday, he would have dominated. I saw him play a little guard. I saw him play center yesterday. He kind of moved around as well, but mentality wise, like, he's there. He wants to punish people. Right? I know it's one-on-one pass rush drill, but man, if this was inside zone or one-on-one in the goal line, like, that's the guy you want to run behind because he's going to blow somebody off the ball.
Any news on the running back coach search?
Yeah, not resolute news, but the news is that it's a real search. It's not like, hey, we like two or three guys and let's hone in on it, kind of like how the cornerback search was. This is a real search. And I think part of that is, like we've been talking about, is the demand. The supply is through the roof. They're going through all these options they probably didn't even know they had. And so I think that's probably lengthened this out a little bit. It could be NFL, it could be college. Of course, the issue with an NFL guy is a guy going to recruit? You know, those guys, I don't want to say they get lazy, but they get used to a certain lifestyle. Texas looked for NFL guys last year, D tackle coach, and it was really the lifestyle that of the college coach recruiting demands that dissuaded some of them. So it's I don't have a good news other than say that it's a full-bodied search, and I don't know what's going to happen.
We should hire the Detroit Lions running back coach. I really like him. I think Tashard Choice would be really solid if we could hire him.
Jameer Gibbs, bring him too.
Could bring him back. That's really innovative, Eric. Now you're thinking.
Detroit hired the world's best Aggie. Like, I don't know how they figured that out.
Yeah.
With teams hiring guys for general manager roles, does Texas have a guy in the general manager role, or is it just Sark?
Well, Brandon Harris has the title, and he just got a big bump.
Yeah, he did.
A lot of demand for Brandon Harris the last couple of years. Sark schools are coming after. Alabama came after Sark last year. NFL came after Sark this year. Last year, Alabama came after Harris. I think Alabama again, and maybe Miami, one of those Florida schools, I think, made a run at him. Might have been Auburn. I don't know. But a lot of demand for Brandon. He's the GM. It's kind of like, I do think that I wrote this in 2022, right before they hired Gary Patterson, that they should just hire a guy that's tired of being a head coach, but still good with personnel, or an upward mobile guy that wants to be a head coach and want to learn from one of the best, but has sort of an eye for talent. I think they should get a full throttle GM. I do. Sark and Brandon Harris, they work these guys too hard. Brandon Harris works too hard. Sark works too hard. There's just too much going on. The calendar never rests in college football. I do think that there's a time for a GM, or maybe just go get even an NFL GM retread would work in this position.
I want to say go to the actual NFL where they have
Notre Dame did, right?
Guys.
Notre Dame got from the NFL, so yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it can also be a salary cap dude. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. But I definitely think, and now Sark's always going to have the final say. That's going to be the nature of the structure. But I think a guy that would take something off Sark's plate would be good.
Sure.
Definitely.
Texas needs to get multiple dominant guards in their 2026 recruiting class. I think currently Texas has the potential to have 3 very good guards, but one will likely be starting center in 2025. How do you guys feel about that?
You look at the 2026 class and who they're recruiting. You go Mr. Katoa out of Euless Trinity. If he gets in the trash, and in the class, that's the dominant guard. He blows everybody off the ball. I mean, he's a big athletic kid, and most of those guys, he's not from the island, but traditionally, I guess, heritage is where he's from, but even though he lives in Euless, like, he has that mentality that you want. And if you put whoever that guard or in the interior, he's another guy that has that mentality, right? Drawing a blank, I think another guy, I want to say it's Nicholas Robertson. I think I got it right. Another guy you can put at guard who's a bully in there. So Texas is recruiting those guys in this 2026 class. They all jump in. You got exactly what you're looking for, Mr. Williams. Like, those guys fit that mold perfectly.
Here's the thing you have to remember, though, is that tackles cost a whole lot. And so you don't really want to go get an elite guard unless he's truly an elite guard and you have a glaring hole. Texas should not have a glaring hole at guard ever again, just the way that they've recruited the last 3 cycles, 4 cycles, whatever it is. So you don't want to go spend a ton for a guard. That's not sound salary cap football. Bad economics. Spend it on the tackles and cultivate your guards. Nick Robertson, Katoa, that's what they're looking for. They want to be able to run the ball in from the 1 yard line.
All right, Coach, we'll run through the last few guys from your visit, kind of rapid fire.
Yeah.
What did you think of Donovan Webb, defensive back out of Frisco?
Finally got to see Mr. Webb in person, man. He won MVP. He looked very, very good. Line up in the slide, line up at safety, line up out wide covering receivers, man. He can move. He's a DB he's versatile. You can put him in at star, you can play him at corner, you can play him at safety. He really showed his versatility yesterday, just covering guys. I'm not afraid to get up and cover some of the best yesterday. And so I really love what I saw from Webb.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is Haywood the little brother of Ty Haywood?
He is not related.
I was gonna say that's weird because one was at Denton Ryan and one is at Denton Geyer, and that doesn't.
Yeah, he's actually
you wouldn't split a family like that.
They're actually from Mississippi. They moved to Texas a few years ago, but Haywood is a kid that continues to rise, man. He's grown. I think he's almost 6'3" now, but he was unblockable yesterday. Nobody could stay in front of him. He has all the moves. He has the power. He's a phenomenal defensive lineman. I think he's going to be one of the top guys in 2027.
Kadrian Redmond, is that how you pronounce it? Defensive lineman out of Lake
Adrian.
Valley.
Yeah, definitely. That's the guy that camped at Texas last summer. Coach Baker said he wanted to see more, and his goal was like, I'm gonna earn that Texas offer, right? And he's grown, he's earned it. Yeah, he got an offer from Texas on junior day, but he's a big guy in the trenches. He's gonna be a two-gap guy. I mean, he's just a big body, hard to move. Pass rush may not be his specialty, but he's gonna stop the run. He's gonna two-gap and protect the linebackers.
Works for me. Defensive back Taylon Mayo out of Louisville.
Man, for a guy, he got offered in 2023, and he's a 2027 kid. He's legit 6'3.5". He's very good. He's athletic for a big guy. He can move. He has good hips and good feet. I saw him just kind of covering some of the bigger guys. He got out there against Trenton Yancey, a 2027 guy from Duncanville who was destroying everybody, and he was able to stay with Trenton, which is very hard to do. You don't see that from a quick twitch guy being 6'3" most of the time, right? You see those guys like Richard Sherman or maybe remind you of Ryan Watts, but he's a big guy who can move, man. I like him a lot.
So overall, good camp. You felt good about what you saw yesterday?
I did. I mean, I like to say I love the trenches more because there's just some more guys in the trenches, and I like this physicality of the game and more versus with the skill guys. But it was overall a good camp.
Good stuff. What kept Nato from playing this past season? Would have liked to see him on goal line packages.
Hayden Conner kept him from playing. Hayden Conner, I love Hayden. I've loved Hayden since he was in ninth grade. And I was, not his biggest advocate coming into the season, but Hayden played very well. Not the punch you want as a run blocker, but they're not going to be inclined to bring in a guy unless they feel really, really good about his assignment soundness. So the consistency and Hayden Conner in front of him is the big issue. It's got to be, when you're at 4th and 1, you talk about those goal line packages. That's high leverage situations. They want to feel very confident in the personnel. Pulling off the assignment, and I don't think they had that confidence. But this year's huge for him. If he's not starting this year at guard, I'm either gonna question him, development, Kyle Flood, something's got to be questioned because it's his time to shine now.
Someone will fall for this. Is there a young offensive lineman that could make a push for a starting job over one of the upperclassmen?
Right tackle is going to be probably Brandon Baker or Andre Kojo. I don't know. I don't think that's really what he's talking about. None of the interior guys are going to be supplanted by a young guy. That's just not going to happen. But Nate Kibble is the guy really high on at guard. It's kind of like Kelvin Banks in a DJ Campbell body, but not quite DJ Campbell's athleticism, upside, punch. He has power, don't get me wrong. I could see him actually playing center one day down the road. But Kibble's a guy they're high on. I just don't see a young guy coming out of nowhere to unseat what we expect out of Cole Hudson or DJ Campbell or Neto.
And I don't want to see young guys. Like, we're in year 5. We finally built the O-line pipeline that we didn't have.
Right.
I don't want to see young guys. I want to see the 4th and 5th. We're not in that position where we need a savior anymore, hopefully.
Right. You don't want to see Christian Jones have his struggles. You want to see Christian Jones come out and play. They're past playing the Christian Jones when he's a year out there before he should be out there. You want to play these guys on the proper developmental timeline. And part of it, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out because they've taken big classes, but they've taken a lot of guys that I would consider more projects than anything. And so now we're going to see, it's time to see how good of a developer Flood is. He had a lot of good raw materials to work with. It's a shame that Cameron Williams didn't come back because we didn't see him play his best football. Kelvin Banks is a no-doubter. He got Christian Jones kind of at the right time. But, we need to see some of these guys that they took that, rated 87 need to step up and become good players.
Yeah. All right. So the game within the game right now is actually constructing your roster, and that's how you actually win in modern football. And so this is what you need to know and understand why the teams that are having success are having success. It's because they're managing their rosters correctly in the new NIL era. So Eric did a piece on the offense, and we'll hit this quick. So your first thing you talk about quarterbacks, your opening line is there are no cheap quarterbacks worth having. There are only affordable ones. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, there's no such thing as a cheap quarterback. And the affordable ones are just simply the ones that haven't played yet. You're going to have to spend a lot at quarterback. That's pretty obvious. But you want to have time to develop them, and you want them to be affordable while you develop them. And that's sort of the case. Now, Dia Bell, I think Dia is different than Trey Owens, obviously, and KJ Lacey, in that, Dia to me is sort of the next Arch. I think he has a similar game to Arch. He's going to have a similar recruiting profile, not quite Arch just because nobody will have it. That's going to cost you a lot, but the upside is there. So quarterback, it's going to be an expensive position no matter what.
What do you do at running back? Because high school running backs can absolutely take over.
Yeah.
NFL running backs are valuable when the team is already good, but they're not going to win you games. So diminished returns in the NFL, ballers in high school, college is kind of this middle ground. So what do you do with running back spending? Just get really damn good ones, right? And they're going to matter.
Well, you can play it both ways. You can play it, hey, we need that stud elite guy, or you can moneyball it like the NFL. And I think you do that year to year sort of, and you cycle it. And we're seeing that last year. And I love the takes. Ricky Stewart and Jonathan Brooks would have been a bargain buy, right? And it worked out. But I was always high on Brooks.
So was I. I saw his huddle. I was like, this kid's a baller.
Yeah, I thought when he got offered, I was like, who the hell is this kid? And he's going to blow up like Ronald Jones. I remember seeing Ronald Jones didn't blow up until the last minute. I knew Ronald before he had his first offer, and he just blew up. And I thought Jonathan Brooks was going to blow up the same way. It just didn't happen. I'm like, well, the talent's here. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Yeah. So they got a bargain buy there. That's where evaluation is very important, right? And I think they did a really good job on Ricky Stewart. And I love James Simon. James Simon is a versatile back. I don't think he's special in any regard, but he's good all around. So that was kind of
every down.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of the bargain year, and now this year is not going to be cheap. I mean, it's not going to be cheap at all. So it's a roster cycle. It's kind of like, do you allocate a second round draft pick to it, or do you try to go 5th round, 6th round, maybe even a free agent?
Yeah.
This year they're going 1st, 2nd round sort of value on it.
Oh yeah, we need it. And what you said interestingly about tight end, I have no concept of the tight end market. The only two truly talented tight ends I can recall transferring in recent years was Max Clare and Jalen Conyers. And then you mentioned Eli Stowers at
that was a good one.
Yeah, so
it's a weird position, right? Like we want the 5-star elite guy, but it's a weird evaluation with tight ends.
So there was a kid out of Florida, I think, a couple years ago that got an insane amount, and he was more of a wide receiver than anything else. And he's just a long stick, but very athletic. And his dad was working the system hard, trying to get the biggest NIL deal, and obviously Texas fell short on that. I haven't really had a recruitment that gave me an understanding on tight ends. So that's why I invoked the portal there, because that's how we figure out value a lot. Texas has done very well, I think, recruiting as far as like Jordan Washington, but they have never broken the bank for tight end. Jatavian Sanders, that was actually before Steve overlap with Sarkisian. They haven't really broken the bank for tight end. So I don't have a value to it, but I understand, unless they're a unicorn, you shouldn't have to break the bank. You can find, and the NFL finds value all the time. Where's George Kittle drafted? Where was Jason Kelsey drafted?
Right.
Drafted. You don't have to do that, but it's a fun position to evaluate intelligence, toughness, fluidity. And I would say intelligence again, because it works in a couple different ways. You're a pass blocker. You also have to find the soft spot in zones. There's just a lot of different to evaluate that position. Unless they're a unicorn, like that basketball small forward that runs the seam and crushes everybody, I don't think you should have to spend a lot.
Yeah.
I agree.
I agree, and it's one of those.
Jason Witten's kid was at the camp yesterday, right? The linebacker.
Yeah.
Was
He looked good.
Jason Witten might be the most unathletic Hall of Famer I've ever seen.
Yeah, because you know how that's the thing, man. It's like you said, the intangibles at tight end. There's a couple positions that it's the off the field super matters, and tight end is because you need to be able, like you said, find the zone, that kind of stuff. But also you want a willingness to block. It's a weird group of traits that doesn't really come anywhere else in football.
Yeah, and so I don't have a feel on the market for that.
Yeah,
makes sense.
Also, man, like me and Ian have been pounding, like, man, take that walk on, man. Like, give it that. If tight end is a Rudy position, like you can get these guys from the depths of the team.
Find a dual threat quarterback that's 6'4", can't throw it worth a lick, and make him become 240 pounds.
Yeah,
I agree with that one.
Wide receiver.
Well, wide receiver, you got to break the bank.
But what's interesting is you talk about, bringing in the 5 stars from high school, but also, man, get the 1 year rental are paying off too. So
this is where you have to be smart about it, because you have to get your Ryan Wingo, but you can't have dead capital. We'll talk about that in a minute at offensive line. You can't have dead capital. And so you don't want to spend, let's say DeCorian Moore costs $1 million, or more than that. You can't have that guy sitting on the bench if it's his freshman year. Well, at Texas, you want that guy to sit on the bench because you want to have an established veteran. So they're in an iffy spot, and that's where the value of the veteran that comes in, and they always get him on the upside, right? Adonai Mitchell had 17 catches a year before he got to Texas. Matthew Golden had 40 catches or whatever, but wasn't nearly the player.
Turns into a first rounder by draft.
The traits were there. The traits were there, so they're getting these guys cheap for 1 year. So let's hypothesize that you paid Adonai Mitchell $800 for 1 year. It's a whole lot cheaper than paying him $2.8 for 3 years and having very similar production, because you're not getting that production until that final year when he's experienced. So you really have to be smart about it, but you still have to have those guys in the pipeline, and that's why you got to play a guy like Jamie French, you got to play Khaleke Lockett, and you got to play Ryan Wingo, even though he should have had more than 25 catches or whatever it was last year. It's a weird spot, but I would always want to go to the portal and get a guy that's on the come up, like Adonai or Matthew Golden.
Yeah. Explaining that does not seem like a fun room to manage. Also, with the personalities of wide receivers, it's like.
And then, by the way, you got to block. You're not going to play with Chris Jackson unless you block him. Matthew Golden obliged. Isaiah Bond did not. Ryan Wingo will block though, and but DeAndre Moore. It was a unheralded story of how hard Texas went after DeAndre Moore. He was committed to Louisville. You remember there was like a brief moment.
When Louisville figured out NIL and started taking everybody.
Remember Ruben Owens was committed to Louisville.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
So there was a brief moment in time, and Texas went hard for DeAndre Moore. And what he's 7 touchdowns. What's the value of 7 touchdowns on 40 catches, 39 catches? I think there's a lot of value in that, right?
Yeah, it is.
Tough position to manage, you're right, and it's tough position to manage for a couple of reasons. And one of it is you have to be smart with money. You need that upside guy, but you can't have dead weight.
Yeah.
And that's going to matter the most, like you said, with offensive line, when you have guys on 3 and 4 year curves that you're having to pay. You can't be a 5-star because you're not sitting a 5-star with that much money. So you end up having to go for developmental guys that you have to hit, though.
Here's where you have to be very smart on the roster cycle, and this is why they didn't really go hard after Michael Fasusi until they realized Cam Williams was going to be gone. In July, when I think Fasusi committed to Oklahoma, they were not pushing nearly as hard as they pushed in December when they went all out. These guys have longer curves. So if you look at it, they have 17 guys. You have 4 years of eligibility. That's 68 years of eligibility, but they only play 34 of those years.
Right.
Yeah.
So how much money can you have tied up in 34 years sitting on the bench? And that's why I think, and you always have to pay on the flip side, offensive tackles are very expensive. And that's why I think they should balance a little bit more of going to the portal for interior guys. You still need your moonshots at offensive tackle, but you have to be smart what cycle you do it. You can't do it year in and year out. And that's why, last year when people are like, hey, where are the highly rated offensive linemen? They're next year. That's where they are. And there's a reason they were there in 2022 is because they absolutely had to have it, right? That was a huge part of the rebuild. That 2022 offensive line and getting Quinn Ewers was the foundation of the rebuild. Now they're kind of back in that point where they need those tackles, and the cycle is perfect for it. In-state is loaded. But okay, so let's say you take 6 guys, 3 of them are tackles, maybe 4 of them are tackles. What do you think they're going to spend on the interior guys if they're going to the mattresses for the offensive tackles? So it has to come with expectations. It's roster construction. There's a lot of economic factors that go into it.
Yeah, also seems like a very fun room. But also, it's like the problem with offensive line that's scary is that if you miss, you don't find out till 3 years down the road, and then it's almost too late. So it's like that's what sucks about it.
Yeah, they have such a long curve, and that's why the mental eval is so important. And I really like the guys that they got. We talked about that 2023 class. I said it before they even got commits. I said this is going to be a lowly rated class because they're going to have to sit behind the 2022 guys, and you can't have those guys just sitting there getting bored, wanting to transfer, whatever. It's fascinating, right? We have to talk about NFL stuff, but this guy, Jeff G, says, worked out to be able to get Justice Terry rather than Michael Fasusi. They wanted both, and they were going hard after both. But losing Fasusi,
Time to get a win.
It almost meant they had no chance of losing Justice Terry.
Dude, when he announced, even I did not think we were going to get him. Dude, when he announced, hell yeah.
Well, they actually felt pretty good on Fasusi that morning. He was hemming back and forth, which, I mean, good Lord, how did he stay committed to that Titanic? But so there's certain things that you don't need an insider to tell you when they lose Michael Fasusi. You got to feel confident about Justice Terry, but not just that. You got to feel confident about John Turntine in the following cycle. So a lot of times when they miss, it tells you the next guy they're going to get. You can almost put a prediction in with resolve for the next guy.
Texas rarely takes a loss and doesn't fall for it.
Yep.
Everyone will say trust the coaches, and I think that's a fallacy. Coaches get fired every 3 years. I don't trust coaches. They're historically don't trust them. But this staff is the one that's every time I've been I don't know about these guys, and they solve it.
Yeah. It took a little time for them to earn that, because I learned that I would always butting heads with people on the boards during the Charlie Strong era. I trust the coaches. Why? Are you kidding me?
Right. What track record shows you trust them?
This guy's losing a cow. But Sark, it's definitely trust them, and also it's a good time to have NIL and be at Texas, right? That's the big that's what's leveled the playing field.
Yeah. All right. Good show, guys. I had fun.
Hey, this is an awesome one, right? Missed on Adrian Peterson, then landed. Missed on Micah Hudson and got Ryan Winga.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey.
Fans, thanks for hanging out. It's going to be exciting to watch college football change. It's going to, there's a little bit of traditionalist in me, but I think this is a better model if this is the world we're in. I like learning about the roster management side. That's how you win nowadays. And, of course, recruiting, the lifeblood of Inside Texas. Y'all go to InsideTexas.com. You can always stay up to date on your favorite team. Until tomorrow, it'll be myself and Paul. Till then, y'all, hook 'em.